Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, my beloved brothers and sisters. We appreciate your feedback, your critique, and please also share with us what are the topics you'd like us to discuss. And the line is, the time is now. Psychologists have said, if you do not change 48 hours after a presentation, is unlikely you are going to change. And one of the things that I found, and I'm sure it will resonate with our guests, is the fact that people that leave a legacy are those individuals who lead a balanced life, where the family wax lyrical about them, the community says great things about them, people at work also say beautiful things about them. So they are connected in many ways. They have not, for example, been consumed by one thing at the expense of others. So Hussein Manak, so good to see you here, my brother. Hussein, just give a background to the viewers, what you do.
So, Idris, I do a few different things. Sometimes when people ask me that question, I'm not too sure. I think very similar to my brother here next to me, wearing a few different hats.
Yeah.
So, I've been involved in cricket for most of my life. My passion has been sport and cricket in particular. So that's been my career. I played professional cricket for many years and then spent a few years overseas as well playing cricket. And that was really living my dream, When I stopped playing cricket, I got into coaching, got into administration, sat on the board at Gauteng Cricket, then got called onto the national selection panel for the Proteas, which is the South African national cricket team, and sat there for 6 years. I'm still coaching, I'm still involved in grassroots development of young cricketers. And at the moment, what I'm busy doing is I'm putting together courses in how to develop and grow and improve performance around particularly using emotional intelligence and a more holistic form of development. So that's in essence what I'm busy with at the moment.
Yes, indeed. A person of many parts, right? Ibrahim, what about you, my brother?
Let's rather dive into the topic because of time.
Yeah, okay. Okay. See, he's getting away, right? Right, getting a naughty boy, right? Okay, Ibrahim, coming to you, in terms about this balanced life, how do you define it, Ibrahim?
How do you wear 8 hats?
How do you do that?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Balanced life is something that is in danger of becoming wiped out from many homes, simply because historically, if we looked at the times in which our parents lived and the kind of times that we're living in today, very often you will see husband and wife and children sitting around a table, and dinner time, each one is on their phones. So they might be living together, but they're disconnected. I think balance is arrived at when you see role models like your mom and dad having achieved a kind of comfortable fit between themselves. Because in a married environment, both husband and wife will never achieve balance at the press of a switch. It's a process that has to be worked on. And each one has their own strengths and weaknesses. Each one has to kind of fine-tune their relationship with each other in order to achieve that balance. And when you're looking at emotional balance, there has to be emotional balance. There has to be a spiritual balance. There has to be a work-life balance. There has to be balance in terms of how you treat your own children with equity and with love, and the attitude with which your social interactions. One of the major problems that we find in society today is interpersonal relationships and the imbalance that is caused by various factors. And this seems to be a major challenge factor in many societies. So balance has to be achieved, firstly, you cannot achieve a balanced life if you yourself are not emotionally secure, if your relationship with your Creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala, has not been balanced. If there is an imbalance in your relationship with your Creator, it's going to show in your relationship with all those around you. So first of all, there has to be an affirmation, there has to be a validation of who you are as an individual and how you will be interacting with your spouse. And this will then lead to all the other actions that will create a balanced lifestyle in your home, with your children, with your neighbors, with your friends, with your family, with your work, with your studies, etc., etc.
Ibrahim, my God, you said a mouthful, and we'll interrogate each of those aspects. Hussein, from what Ibrahim has said, your own perspective about work-life balance.
Yeah, I think there were certain points that Ibrahim raised where I felt he's actually talking to me.
Is it?
Know? Yeah, I mean, like when you really sometimes look at our lives and you go like, if you have to sit and do an audit, there's so many times where you actually feel you focusing too much, whether it's on career, whether it's on the social aspect, or sometimes too much on the family and you neglect something else. So it's about finding not only time-wise, but even the energy that you put into all the different elements and aspects of our lives. And then they are different. I mean, social is the one, emotional is a very big one. And that's the one where personally I've had a major challenge over the years. You know, you sometimes lose your temper when things don't go your way, when you don't hear what you want to hear. So those are all the challenges. Physical health is a major aspect. If you look at mental and emotional health now, particularly in this last 2 years with COVID and the lockdowns, where people were forced to stay at home, many people losing their jobs, those type of things. I mean, people have really battled in the last 2 or 3 years. So this topic of finding that balance is absolutely an important discussion and topic now to have. And I can tell you this, I mean, I'm not sitting here because I'm an expert and I'm living the perfect life. I've had challenges in my life and I still have them. So this is a challenge that all of us need to find a way to overcome. If you look at COVID in the last 2 years, I speak to so many people on a daily basis. People have lost their jobs, salaries have been cut in half. They at home, they falling into a depressive, getting depressed. Their health is suffering, physical health. You know, so many people get caught up in careers, and these days, the tendency is that we need to be busy. We feel we need to be busy all the time. So if I'm sitting at home and I've got 5 minutes of peace and quiet, I'm sitting there wondering like, something's wrong. I need to be doing something. And so we find something to do, even though that something is not relevant or important to us in many ways. And there's just something I've asked our producer there, Amar, to put up on the screen. And these are the different elements that you could, you know, there's a few others. I mean, you could add here as you would like. But if one had to do an audit, and I spoke about doing an audit on our lives, this is a wonderful way of doing it. So you could take a simple wheel like this and go like family and friends, 1 out of 10. So you know that's two out of 10. But if you look at family and friends, if I had to do an audit, then I'd say like, okay, I'm around about 7 or 8. Maybe finances, I'm doing well. Maybe intimacy with my spouse, I'm doing okay. But on the physical environment, my home office, you know, I need to get that sorted out. And in many ways, that would be different for every single individual. But it's a lovely way of
I like what you've got there. But I want to ask a question, Ibrahim. That's, you know, I mean, there's an incident I've come across where I meet this youngster who tells me, asked him, what did you do? He says, no, I spent the weekend with my dad. I said, your dad must be very happy, you know. I meet the dad and tell the dad, hey, my gosh, you must have been so excited. Your son told me he came. He says, yeah, he came. He met me on Friday night. The next time he spoke to me was Sunday when he was leaving. Yeah. So that's the point, you see. The point is, as you said, and I think it's a very critical aspect of it. Often families feel neglected because either you are in your career, you are, in your home office environment. Now let's look at each of the items. Let's look at the family itself. How can we create a situation in our homes, notwithstanding the frenetic lifestyles we've got, where we are able to spend meaningful time with our families, Ibrahim?
Love and empathy and tolerance are the founding basis for achieving balance, because without those ingredients, you will never achieve balance. But perhaps the most important is if one looks at how you start your day, once you're out of the shower and you're maybe combing your hair in front of the mirror, the dua that one is reading, Allahumma anta hassanta khalqi fahassin khuluqi. Imagine you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have created me excellently. First part. So what are you actually doing? You're actually affirming your positive self-image, no matter how you look, no matter how beautiful you are or handsome you are or not. You're affirming who you are in the sight of your Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has to be a given. You have to be comfortable with yourself. You have to be, if you spend time alone by yourself, and you don't get bored with yourself, that's the first indicator of an emotional balance. The second part of the dua is that you are asking for good character. Now imagine you're looking at your physical form, but you are asking for something that's not physically evident, that's not physically apparent. So the founding basis for balance is good character, right? And character impacts upon all of those things that we've seen on the wheel. Because if there is too much emphasis placed on perhaps career advancement, or perhaps making a living, or perhaps friends out of the home environment, spending too much time at the bingo club or whatever, it's going to create some type of huge imbalances within the family unit.
Okay, there we have it, right? I think as Hussein mentioned when Ibrahim was speaking, I was also reflecting on my own life, and my gosh, I had pangs of guilt and all that, and all of that. And really, I pray, inshallah, that we would embrace this. In the end, all of us want to leave a legacy. And we want people to say, my gosh, he had time for me, and he made a difference to my life. We'll be back immediately after this break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And alhamdulillah, we are so blessed that we have so many dynamic guests who remind us about what our purpose is, what we should be doing. And blessed is that individual who is able to embrace it in his life and make a difference. Hussein, coming back to you, Ibrahim was speaking about empathy, the emotional aspect, and when you are alone and all of that, right? Just, do you have anything else to add in terms of the family? Because the family is such an important unit, because I tell people the whole world can mourn your loss, but if your family feels nothing, they feel a sense of emptiness. I know of people who ask others, tell me about my father. I never knew him.
Yeah. I think one of the, Ibrahim spoke earlier about when you come out of the shower, and he also said about combing your hair, and I don't have that challenge at the moment. So I'm fine.
Your wife wanted
your
wife wanted a broad-minded husband.
so alhamdulillah, I'm okay there, there is a comb there in the bathroom, but my son uses it.
Yeah.
But I think, one of the duas I make in the morning, and I've got into, so for me, it's taken me 50 years to actually wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, because I was not a morning person. I sleep late, wake up late. And those are bad habits I got into over a period of time. And it's taken me 50 years to realize that, the best time is early in the morning to wake up, because that hour or two is worth 4 hours later in the day.
Yes. Yeah.
So one of the duas I make in the morning is for me to be able to connect and bond with my family, and inshallah to be able to have a joyous and a happy and a home that's full of barakah. Because that really, I think, is the foundation. And Idris, you are, your words always stick in my head when you always say that your home should be your sanctuary. So wherever we are out, you go out, you travel, whatever the case is, and you work, go to work. But when you come home, your home should be a sanctuary where you can find peace and comfort and be able to relax. And so I think what has happened with the COVID, and now Ibrahim has also just mentioned off air now about
Load shedding.
the load shedding. All those dynamics that have disrupted the home environment. So the father who was at work, or maybe the mother who was working and out most of the day, and the kids, people's rhythms has been disrupted totally. And suddenly people are losing their tempers emotionally. They're a little unstable. They're on top of one another. Maybe the home's not big enough. Maybe people are single and they're living at home, or a couple suddenly find themselves together for longer than they usually are, and they need to connect in a different way. So there are all those challenges. But I mean, for me, I know I take a lot, I would gauge a lot of my success in this area you speak about, around balance, is exactly what Ibrahim says about, is my home happy? You know, if my home is not happy and there's fights and there's anger and there's issues and people are going to their rooms and closing their doors and things like that, then you know there's work that needs to be
Negative
done.
energy.
There's negative energy around, and there's work that needs to be done. Then there needs to be either an intervention or there needs to be a sit down. But those are different challenges. A conflict, maybe a resolution.
You know, Hussein, you spoke about the COVID thing, right? I know that there's a lot of challenges. People are depressed and whatnot. And sadly, this COVID also, whilst it had some positive benefits in the sense that you are forced to reflect on your life, realign your moral compass, as it were, but there are people that need emotional support. Now, in terms of this balance we speak about, how important is it to seek those individuals, to seek family members who need a shoulder to cry on, some words of wisdom? And you find that people have lost this capacity. They have become pessimistic. You go to weddings, a time of celebration, you see sadness there. People are going there purely because, you know what, I know him, he invited me. There is no engagement. The atmosphere is doom and gloom. So how important is this, Ibrahim, of giving that support, to seek those individuals, to pray for them? How important is it in terms of fulfilling this life balance?
Yeah, I think Hussein has raised a very important point, is the 4 a.m. club. You know, there's a book written on that. But if we're looking at the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the time of Tahajjud and leading up to the time of Fajr, I think it's your most reflective time. It's your most creative time. In fact, your most creative thoughts will be after Fajr or in that period from Tahajjud to Fajr. And it's how you start your day will determine how you end your day. So that's a key process. At the time of prior to Fajr, that 5-10 minutes before Fajr, when you are talking to your Creator, it's just you and your Creator. Can you imagine the level of spiritual balance and spiritual affirmation and spiritual validation it creates within you as an individual? Because that is your trajectory for the rest of the day. Now, you were speaking on your wheel. You had your educational balance. I just want to raise a point. Some very a unique event took place in the past few days, right? You had the James Webb Telescope exploring the universe. Now, there was a 12-year-old kid that was sitting in a Hifz class, and his Hifz teacher told him to take your jacket off because I don't want to see NASA written on your jacket. And this kid obviously didn't know why. But this Hifz teacher did not explain to him that, look, I'm averse to NASA because it's an American company or whatever. That's an imbalance from that teacher's perspective. It creates an imbalance in the mind of that child. If you're looking at what the James Webb Telescope has achieved in capturing images of the universe 3.2 billion years ago, and if we relate that to various ayat of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to reflect upon the stars, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the stars, and we are implored to observe if this telescope didn't reveal those images, and this little child has got this dichotomy in his mind as to why is my Hifz teacher telling me not to wear the NASA sign? That, in my opinion, is a total imbalance, because there's a spiritual imbalance and there's an educational imbalance. One of the problems that we are finding is society is becoming estranged into various camps. We are seeing this at various levels of society. And this is also an indication of the imbalance that we are arriving at. Worldwide, we are seeing the dumbing down of the integrity barrier, right? There's an imbalance in how people are interacting with each other, how corporations are interacting with the general population. So when we're looking at balance, the Quran speaks of al-wasat. You are created as a middle nation. In the wisdom of our Supreme Creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala, He could have used any other word instead of using the word middle. And balance is achieved on the fulcrum.
Correct.
Before you get. So it's on the middle. You have to be a middle nation. You have to be a moderate people in everything that you do.
Yeah. So now that's on different levels,
Yes.
right? But what you said is something that is critical in terms of education, a whole range of things. But I want to still come back to the idea that we are social, gregarious beings.
Yeah.
We are here to uplift others, to heal others. So what I'm saying in this particular context of this COVID and what I've seen at the moment, people's personalities changing, why is it so important again to say, you know what, Islam is not about self-serving. And no Muslim says, you know what, I'm okay, I've got money in my pocket, so life is beautiful. Life is not like that, right? We have seemed to have lost this compassion also. People that were generous have become self-absorbed, right? So, Hussein, what role can we play in terms of maintaining that balance also? In other words, changing deprivation to perhaps, abundance. What can we do?
Idris, as Muslims who live in what is essentially a Western environment, and we're exposed to so many Western influences, whether it's television, general media, social media, etc., we have this challenge in finding the balance, because generally Western society pushes at every level the individual to stand up and fight for his and her freedom. It's about me, I come first. There's this thing now, if you look at just generally about a lot of the younger generation, talking about putting me first.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at the older societies, and one of the things that COVID has highlighted is that the need for people to come together. You're talking about support for people to lean on one another, for communities to live in a communal environment. My mom and dad had COVID, and they were living separately 10 or 15 kilometers away from where I live. And when this happened, you actually began to understand the importance of communal living. So if we go back 100 years, communities live together. In all different countries and cultures, they live together, where the young were supported by the old, with their wisdom, with their experience, and the old were supported by the young with their energy and their vibrant. And so people supported one another. When older people got ill, the youngsters were there to support, and vice versa. And I think there is a need for us to come back to some sort of balance as far as our lifestyles, planning our life, planning our environment. That environmental health is very important. So how do we plan our environment? At the moment, young person studies, gets an education. Okay, I've got my degree, I can go and live on my own. Have we stopped to ask ourselves, but is there a need for that young person who's not yet married to go out? And even if you do get married, is there a need for you to go out and live on your own? Yes, maybe there is. Maybe there's a good reason. But what is that reason, and what are the advantages and disadvantages? Because you are now on your own, and there is, I can tell you now, not only since COVID, but if you go back 5 years, even before that, Idris, we'll come back. I know there's
No,
something.
Jazakumullah for that. A question I want to ask you both, right? At least you'll have a second or two to think about it. Is how do you define success in terms of balance? When you say that person was a successful human being, how do we define it? Because I think people have a very jaundiced interpretation of success. The success that we see in schools, some people see it only in money and whatever. Let's talk about that. So inshallah, it will be a chance for all of us to reflect and say, listen, I want to lead a truly successful life. We'll be back immediately after this break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we are speaking about a life of balance. And a question I said I'm going to ask the guests, in terms of the graph that we have here, how do you measure true success?
Idris, if I could just come back to that in a minute, if I may,
no problem,
with your permission. I was going to finish something earlier.
Okay,
I just wanted to finish that thought.
Yeah.
What I was going to talk about is the fact that this dichotomy between the Western influence and the Islamic lifestyle, culture, religion, and how it almost puts us in the middle, where if we don't find that balance, I think we're going to struggle. And at the moment, you'll find a lot of older people living on their own, stranded, can't even have a bath, younger people living on their own and then struggling. So the trend now has been, in the last 5 to 10 years, the studies are showing us that people are going out, younger people are going out, getting married, then either staying married or getting divorced, but battling financially to survive and then coming back into the family home. So many adults are coming back into the family home just because they discovered then that they're duplicating all the expenses. Everything is being duplicated. And is there a need for that? So from a financial perspective, we talk about finances on the wheel. From an emotional support perspective, from a mental point of view, from a family point of view, it does make a lot of sense to actually think carefully about whether there is a need for a young person. Once I get a job, I need to move out and live on my own. Is there a need for that? Can there not be another solution and maybe work something out where you can still have your level of freedom, but still fit into the family structure? And that's where I think between the Western and the Islamic cultures, you do have that conflict where Western lifestyle is pushing for freedom, individuality, for I come first, it's me and I alone. Whereas Islamically, and many other cultures, talk about supporting one another. If I make a decision and I do something, how does it impact the people around me? And these days, there is generally a move away from that. And that is, I think, frightening and perhaps something that we all need to look at as well.
Thanks for that. Okay, Ibrahim, I want you to pursue this aspect of success.
Yeah, the breakdown of the extended family system that Hussein is talking about is one of the contributors to the imbalance that we're finding in society. The second one is the overt emphasis on individual liberties at the expense of individual obligations. So if we are looking at one of the most important functions of a sibling is to look after sons, daughters have to look after their parents, right? They have to carry their parents on a golden platter. And if that aspect is taken away, where the kids are living on their own, far away, and they are in total obsessed with their careers, etc., we must not confuse the paper qualifications with knowledge. We must not confuse the paper qualifications with wisdom, because ihsan, doing good for others, is one of the most important functions of a mu'min. And how you impact upon the lives of others will bring about that sense of balance into your emotional quotient, your spiritual quotient, your religious quotient as well. And it will also fulfill the functions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from us. The moment there is an overt emphasis on my way or the highway, or my life and my demands and my wishes at the expense of the other, you have this imbalance. And we are seeing this in Japanese society, where you have the highest concentration of the elderly. And you know what is their major complaint? Is that they're living very lonely lives. We're seeing this in American society, where children perhaps haven't spoken to their parents for years and years, and will meet up perhaps on the day of the funeral, if ever. So there's a breakdown in the family unit. And that is why there is this emphasis from our Sunnah of preserving the family unit. The preservation of the family unit is the structure, the backbone of society. And once that goes, you will see the symptoms of it, like we are seeing it in different societies. We are seeing some of the symptoms in our societies also now, where we have old age Muslim homes, old age frail care centers. They are required, they are necessary. But if you do not have people communicating and showing empathy and showing love and tolerance and respect to these elderly people, it's sadly another symptom of a broken down society.
Okay, you know what? As you are speaking, there is a big difference between success and significance. Success is often seen in material things. Success, you'll see it in a guy's CV. But significance is about the impact you have had on the lives of other people, your loved ones, your family, and society in general. Like in terms of this life balance, like sometimes, a guy says, you know what, I want to come out first at school. I want to be an achiever, me, myself, I. And this kind of is become quite pervasive. And sometimes you look at him, he's so successful. Now, the thing is, what do we need to do to change? The things that you are speaking are things of value, your family, your aspect of spirituality, your relationship with Allah. These are things that seems to be not part of the equation. So how can we change all of this? What do we need to do? Because for the viewers who are looking for answers, because we hope through this program, we begin to confront each other, because as I'm listening to both of you, I'm thinking about my life, and I like to believe all of us are doing also introspection. So what do we need to do?
It is so often, and you hit the nail on the head, that so often we would judge success. And growing up, this is how we grew up. Yes, we had a very strong Islamic grounding to start with, but as we went out into the world, it was about the successful person was the one with the most expensive car, and who dressed the smartest and who had the best job. So people will often ask, what do you do? And then you have a judgment on that individual based on how much money he's earning, whether he owns businesses, etc., whether he's driving a fancy car or not. And so often, I know people like, my dad is one of them, so humble, because even if he has an option of driving a Mercedes, he doesn't want to drive it. He wants to drive a simple car. And people think it's you drive this fancy car, it's a sign of success. Yes, there's nothing wrong with dressing well. There's nothing wrong with, but I think that doesn't become us. That should not be us. We are still individuals. It's about a lot more. So if you look at that wheel again, so often success is judged on finances, maybe
and the
career and business.
Correct. Yeah.
Those are the two things in society. The wheel is up there again, career and finances. Those are the two things generally. But what about family and friends? That could be falling apart. What about your relationship with your spouse? If you look at romance and intimacy, health is probably one of the most important things. And there's so much Islam talks about, gives us so much advice about how to live a healthy, balanced lifestyle, particularly around the aspect of health and how to find good health with regards to our eating habits, with regards to waking up in the morning, the exercise element, bring in all those, and then but they are all interrelated.
In fact,
everyone interrelates on the other.
In fact, Ibrahim, I remember a motivational speaker he asked the audience in America or Canada, he said to them, if I were to give you $1 million, what would you do? Write it down. And they wrote a number of things. Then he said to them, well, I want you to imagine, and I would also suggest this to the viewers. I want you to imagine that you are in the twilight years of your life. What you think will be your regrets? And I assure you, those regrets will be related to all of these things. So in terms of why are people procrastinators? They say, yes, tomorrow I'll go and see my dad. Tomorrow I'll visit the sick person. Then you get a phone call, your dad passed away. You get a phone call, the sick person passed away. Tomorrow I'll do this. Why is it? It's become like a culture? We respond that way, Ibrahim.
Well, if you take the byline from your program, the time is now.
Yeah.
Everything, one shouldn't hesitate in doing good. I think that's a saying of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu.
Yeah.
But there's a very instructive incident from Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's time. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sitting in Masjid Nabawi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and there was a man that entered. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sitting with a few of the companions, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked the companions, "What do you think of this man?" So some of the companions said, "Oh, he's a very good man. If I have a daughter, I have no qualms about giving the hand of my daughter in marriage to this man." A second Sahabi responded saying that I will willingly do business with this person. I will willingly accompany him on the trip, etc., etc. After a while, another man walked into the masjid. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked the companions, "What do you think of this man?" And there was hesitancy because the apparent signs of success was not evident on the second person that walked into the masjid. And the companions replied, there was hesitancy, saying that nobody said, "I'll give my daughter's hand in marriage to him. I will not do business with him," etc. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's instructive advice was that one of this man, the one who walked in second, that all of you are so hesitant to talk about, is better than 1,000 of the other that walked in first.
Look at that.
So it's the markers that we use. What defines success?
Correct.
What encapsulates for us a successful, balanced human being?
Yeah.
And this is, I think, very instructive. If we look at what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used as the markers for success, if we take instruction from the life of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, as to what are the markers of success, that is going to put us on the correct path of what defines success, instead of using the artificial constructs that are currently, the markers in society of successful human beings.
If I could, do we have some time? Or are you going to break now?
Immediately after the break, Hussein, it's your turn. It's your turn, inshallah. Time is incredible.
Yeah.
We are enjoying this conversation. It's not like we are posing Hazrat and all that. It's so easy going. And what I want to do immediately after the break, Hussein, you could respond. And I would like you all what are some of the takeaways we would like the viewers? What's some of the things they can do? What they should do, inshallah, so that they'll be able to transform their life. We'll be back immediately after this break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you are smiling, you are positive, and you are confronting your true self. Right, Hussein, before the break, you wanted to expand on something?
Thank you, Idris. I wanted to come in on your earlier question, but what can we do and what can the viewers do with regards to finding success and finding balance in life? My view is, and my philosophy has always been that, life is a journey. None of us are perfect, and I don't think we'll ever reach perfection. But all we can do is try and be a little better today than we were yesterday. And I think if we move in that direction every day, do a little bit, in 365 days, it's amazing what we can achieve. I mean, sometimes people may not even recognize the person you were a year ago. So it's quite amazing. So it is a journey. And I think very often we do get frustrated as human beings. It's it's human nature to be frustrated. We feel we're not improving, we're not getting there, things are not changing. Sometimes we take a step forward and take two steps backwards, and we do get frustrated. So it is a journey. I think the other thing is, it's so important to identify, if we look at all those 8 elements there, it's mental well-being, psychological well-being, emotional well-being, physical health, and all those other elements, finances, family, etc. What do you see as an individual? What is important to you? So what is a priority for you? And if I look at it and I go like, okay, family is a priority for me. My health is a priority for me at my age now. So then I need to make sure that if there's a choice between me going into the office and there's a meeting, or somebody calls me for an appointment for a future business deal or whatever it may be, or an opportunity, and spending time with my family, the choice is simple, because I've identified what my priorities are. If there's a choice between a business meeting and going to gym in the morning, it's simple. So you don't have to always be indecisive and thinking, what do I need to do? Because your choices are made once you decide on what your pecking order is, as far as the level of priorities are. So I think that for me is where I've begun to find a way, some sort of way in planning my day. I think the other thing it is it's so important when you look at all the elements. I think a really important thing for me, I found, is that if I can sit the night before and plan my day, then I wake up hitting the ground running. I'm not waking up and wondering what am I going to do at 10 o'clock. But so the day before is so important. The Sunday or the Saturday is so important for planning your week. So I think a lot of it does come to planning, just sitting, organizing yourself and taking it. Sometimes it's a 5-minute thing, it's not an hour thing. It's just sitting down the night before, planning your day, and okay, this is more or less my day. But it's a guideline. I think things do change as you go.
But Hussein, I think for every human being, if you stop him, even though he has not deliberated, and you say to him, how's your life? Are there things that you're supposed to do, you're not doing? He'll give you answers immediately, right? But we make assumptions. We have forgotten our mortality. We make assumptions that we're going to be alive tomorrow, right? So Ibrahim, in terms of our viewers, and we are here to help them. That's the purpose of this program. We're not here to pontificate, sermonize, or pass judgment on others. I think as we are speaking, and I can see it's also tugging at your heartstrings, Hussein, right? We are reflecting on our own lives, right? So what kind of advice for a guy from scratch and start off, right? He may be in his 50s, 60s, or a young person, individual watching this program, or the wife watching this program. What advice do you have for them?
Well, firstly, there's a saying that if you lose all your money in the world, you've lost nothing, because you can start again. If you've lost your health, you've lost something. But if you lose your integrity, if you lose your values, you've lost everything, right? So a true success would be to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that you do, firstly. Secondly, in fulfilling the objectives and lifestyle, not only in terms of outward appearance, but in terms of heart, in terms of soul, of what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam intended for us as human beings, and the lives that we touch as we go along. Last week, my beloved daughter Sumaya, and I went to give out some blankets in an impoverished area. There were around 60 old ladies, some bent over, walking with walking sticks, and it was a very cold morning. So one of the old ladies asked me in the vernacular that, are you doing this because of Madiba Day? So I told her, look, Madiba's birthday is on the 18th, mine is on the 19th. And we're just doing it because of a greater power, right? So she found it quite strange because everybody climbed onto the bandwagon of 67 minutes for Madiba, etc., etc. My son-in-law, Ayub, couldn't be there because he was still in the business. But to view those who are less fortunate than you, and this is what we need to teach our children as well, because it stops that culture of I want, and instant gratification immediately. Once you open their eyes to those that are less fortunate. The third most important contributor to a balanced lifestyle is if you're sitting around a fire and you're looking, after dinner, you have your children with you, your grandchildren with you. And if your children in their actions and your extended family, your son-in-laws, your daughter-in-laws, whatever, bring that sense of coolness to your eyes and a peace to your heart and a sense of joy that, look, I, with the help of Allah, have achieved something with my children and with my grandchildren. Have I brought about a level of consciousness to them as valuable human beings that can make a difference in the society in which they live? Yes or no? Then I have achieved something as a parent. And of course, my spouse, my beloved wife's role is as important because she is as guilty of achieving that success as I am. So the markers for success that we would use, let us move away from the concept that Hussein mentioned earlier of the Western markers for success, because the Islamic markers for success that we find in the Quran and the Sunnah are the true markers of success. And if we've managed to instill that level of consciousness in our kids, for them to have discernment, to be able to discern education from knowledge to wisdom, right? And I would end off with a little ditty that was taught to many children in the old schools. Let us never rest till our good is better and our better best, right? So that aspirational aspect to always improve yourself in whatever you are doing, the search for excellence, right? The search for achieving a higher objective. And it doesn't always have to be the more shinier car or the more shinier watch or the bigger house. Those markers are very fragile markers. We need to get our moral compass, our emotional compass, our intellectual compass, our spiritual compass on the things that matter. And those things that matter have been taught to us by our Sunnah, by our Akabirin, by the role models that we have in our history. Those are the markers that we need to aspire to.
Hussein, you have a chance of talking directly. And there are many thousands, Muslims and non-Muslims, who watch this program. What advice can you give them?
Yeah, I think for me it's about, Ibrahim mentioned now about how we can continue to improve ourselves. There's a Japanese philosophy that talks about constant daily self-improvement. And I think we can look at how we can improve in all those different aspects, particularly coming back to a foundation Islamic value system. I think we're on the right track, because really the answers are there. The answers are in the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's where we tend to lose our way. The influence these days on social media, cinema, movies, Netflix, all those things, the influence are huge. And that is a massive challenge for us as parents, for grandparents, for, particularly with the youth. How do we keep them grounded and keep them, Mariam kept talking, I was listening earlier about the rope of Islam and how do we keep them, and us as well, tied to that rope of Islam, so that if anything happens, we still have that rope and we can still come back to our basic values, base camp. That really should be base camp. So without that foundation, I think we're all going to be lost. So really, that's what it's about for me.
And that foundation is set in the home by the parents. That foundation is set in the home by the parents. If you have absent parents, if you have the absent parent syndrome, which is happening in many homes today, you are going to have unbalanced children. That's critical. So that's cemented first.
As you were speaking, Hussein, I'm not too sure who asked this question. He said when kids go to school, we often ask them what you want to become when you grow old. He said, but I have a different question for them.
Mm.
My question is, what career you're going to pursue so that humanity benefits from you?
Mm.
So it's a different kind of vision,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And also, I think you spoke earlier about the legacy you leave.
Mm.
I think a large part of it for me also, how do you make people around you feel? Is there a level of respect? I think Ibrahim spoke earlier about the degree, which is just merely a piece of paper. I think you can have all the degrees in the world, but if you don't have respect for our fellow human beings and people around us, particularly our seniors and adults and the older, and that's where, you know, the Western lifestyle seems to be going, is that total disrespect for adults and senior people, and they left to languish and take care of themselves. Then we seem to be heading in the wrong direction. But that really is a challenge.
Sorry. There you have it, my beloved brothers and sisters. Such an animated discussion. I want to thank our guests, Hussein and Ibrahim Patel, for sharing their experience, their wisdom, and it forces one to reflect. Therefore, we are told in Islam to die before your death, to reflect on your own life and ask yourself, have I been the vicegerent of Allah on this earth? Have I been a productive Muslim? So you have an opportunity now. It's never too late. Raise up your hands and ask Allah for guidance, and inshallah, be that individual. Be the loving father, the loving mother, the caring brother. Be the caring community worker. Be the loving individual who inspires others so that you would leave a legacy. This is Idris Kamisa saying, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and I like it.